Nicholas, welcome to the show.
Thank you for the invitation, Steve.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to our conversation. You know, it's funny how LinkedIn is. I saw some of your posts and some of the amazing things that you are doing at Swiss M4M and reached out to you. And here we are having a podcast to talk about some of the novel technologies you're working on.
Very happy to be here and to share some experience about that.
Excellent. You know, one of the things that I've been really interested in over the years is in med tech is um, all the great work that's being done in the metal space, all the specialty metals, titanium, the different grades of stainless steel, and of course my favorite, nitinol, because of its super elasticity and shape memory characteristics. And there's a lot of different modalities or different processes for some of these devices, and some of them are becoming quite complex. And an example of that is in the laser processing space. We see laser technologies to process metals, nitinol, stainless steel tubes. For instance, we take a billet, right? We melt and then create a billet of nitinol, and then kind of a gun drilling and create like a shape, like a stent. And talking to some of the people in this space that are involved in processing some of these metals, it's like they don't even see this anymore, right? They see more complex parts like this. So I'm looking forward to talking about not only some of the work that you're doing in additive, but the ability to produce complex parts, extremely complex shapes and patterns, and scale them. Really, that's really the key. Is it's one thing to make a prototype part, but another to be able to scale it, right?
Yes, exactly. Scaling in additive manufacturing is a big topic today. I mean, this technology, even if everyone is talking about, is not very old. The experience on this technology is 30 years old, I would say, to be fair. And scaling industrialization of this designs is one of the challenge today, especially in the medical device field with regulations, with validations that comes to it. All together basically shifts the complexity from a pure technology point of view to what is around it.
Yeah, yeah. Can you dig a little deeper into that as it relates to bringing a prototype to serial production and the importance of there's this term design for manufacturability, and in your world it's a little different, right? Just design for additive manufacturability and how critical that is in the early stage when you're working on a program.
Yeah, yeah. We face it in different stage. Basically, the very early stages is basic bring the industry, bring our potential customer to understand what is really additive manufacturing about, what are the possibilities, the challenges, but also the limitation. To often receive requests from codes for parts that are not really prepared to be 3D printed. Um, this is the first step. Try to speak with the people, explain, teach them, or guide them, support them to be able to modify a design in a way that it can be, I would say, printable as a prototype first. Then, of course, comes the big topic of design for manufacturing or design for additive manufacturing. At the end, it's the same with different rules,
Yeah.
how to bring a design in a way that can be uh, printable, but also in an economic way. And then there are, of course, all the geometries, orientations, somehow also the material choice, but also all related post-processing step that needs to be done. It's rare or almost impossible that 3D printing is making you a medical device. A supply chain makes it an end-to-end supply chain from powder to post-processing, finishing, cleaning is making it. And bringing all that together with the customer, talk with them, what are the possibilities? is what we face every day.
Yeah. And I guess when you look at that whole ecosystem like you described, you mentioned the complexity of some of these parts and whether or not it can be printed, which is interesting because there's in many cases there's parts that can be printed but actually can't be machined, right? There's some applications like that where you
Yes.
can't even machine them, but you can 3D print them, which opens up a new possibilities.
Yeah. We have basically, we follow two business or even three business models. There is this complexity advantage, the being in a design space that is unique for additives. That's the holy grail,
Yeah.
somehow, to be able, as a company, to have a design that is very difficult to replicate from the competition. The other business model that is very interesting is speed of execution.
Yes.
I mean, be able to bring devices faster to the market because this time to market is money. And of course, the third business model is having designs that are much cheaper to produce, consolidation of parts, making from an assembly one unique part is the dream. In
Yeah.
somehow, we see it a lot in instruments, surgical instruments 3D printing, that we can simplify and also reduce cost drastically with this kind of things.
That's interesting. Can you dig a little deeper into the? I mean, this is the whole thing, right? Is speed to market and having solutions, whether it's a prototype in your hand within maybe days versus weeks, right? And especially if you think about a startup company in medtech, whether it's orthopedics or medical device, the burn rate. You go through cash and you have a new device that's novel that solves an unmet need in the space, but you need to act quickly and fast. Otherwise, you got to be the first to market, and this is an enabling technology that really streamlines that process, right?
Absolutely. I mean, speed is key, not only for startups, but also
Yeah,
for bigger OEMs.
yeah,
I would say be able to iterate fast in the product developments to go quicker to NPIs is mandatory today. No one is sleeping.
yeah,
Um, being able to learn by errors because it's almost impossible to do it right the first time,
yeah,
even if it's absolutely a wish. But this iteration mindset is absolutely important, but also supported 200% with additive. And with that, you can save money, you can be faster, you can be visible, you can bind a customer in this process, you can support a surgeon with some basically ideas. There are plenty of advantage out of that additive is enabling today.
absolutely. One of the most interesting areas that I'm looking forward to talking about and learning about is laser beam powder bed fusion and some of the materials that you work with that process. In particular, if we could talk a little bit about nitinol, but you can talk about the different materials that are used in that process. So you can kind of give us an overview of that and some examples maybe of different parts.
Yeah. Basically, additive manufacturing is a big landscape. There are plenty of technologies today. I would say if you are in the medtech field, the two biggest metal technology that are used is electron beam, that is basically suited for, I would say, core structure. And we are using laser beam, power bed fusion. That means it's a technology that is building parts layer by layer of powder fused by the laser. It's a welding process, simply speaking. And in the medical field, you have titanium, cobalt chrome, stainless steel, and more exotic materials, nitinol. Um, Today you can address different fields. If I start with one is a custom-made device. That's a talus. That's the replicate of your talus. That it's an ankle bone. If it, I would say, die, simply speaking, by necrosis, blood supply is missing, you try to replace that. It's a fully 3D printed device, polished to the end to allow to regain integrity of your ankle joint. It's a custom-made device or personalized device based on patient anatomy that is taken from CT scan, then segmented, design adapted, and post-processed to the end. That's one of the example that are today done. The other one on the other side is a hip cup, titanium hip cup with this complex structure, lattice osteo-integrative structure that is basically not a patient specific in this case, but more serial production. That means bigger OEMs produce that in thousands today.
Yeah.
The reason why additive is this structure, you can steer it in a right way to increase the, I would say, impact of bone ingrowth.
Okay.
The last one maybe is stainless steel surgical instruments in different shapes and sizes. Here it's a forceps used for traumatology and spine surgery. And also here, assembly, 3D printing, post-processing.
That patient-specific example that you started off with pretty amazing. You take the model from the CT scan and then print and polish. The surface finish looks amazing as well.
Yeah, that's today the requirements. I mean, again, I said that 3D printing alone is never winning the game.
Yeah.
Uh, I would say the complexity to, in my opinion, to 80% is more what comes before and after. That means powder, design, preparation, and also heat treatment, post-processing and the CNC machining, milling, turning, and then until to polishing and cleaning. This is the challenge, and mastering that makes a difference. 3D printing alone, we used to say that's the happy engineering time here. But of course, this is what is interesting for everyone, but it's not where the complexity is. Definitely not.
That's interesting. I was giving you this example, right? Which it's like complex. This is just a demo, but it shows the complexity of a laser processed part. And the gentleman told me, he goes, well, that's, like you said, happy stuff, fun stuff. He's like, the real work is the post processing.
Yes.
Can you talk a little further about that? Whether it's electro polishing or whatever, just in the surface finishes, because we have a different process. This isn't really a machining process. So how do you get the surface finish levels to the quality levels that are required that match maybe a CNC type process?
Basically, today, according to design, there are different strategies.
Mm-hmm.
The use of CNC milling, turning is a great option. But to go to the level to a polished part, there is also a big preparation of what is 3D printing as itself. And maybe complexity in 3D printing is basically to validate or to control the parameters in order that the porosity allows you a good finishing. And then comes the option from CNC, tumbling, blasting, wet blasting, then electropolishing wet, electropolishing dry, hand polishing, chemical etching.
Mm-hmm.
There are a bunch of, I would say, options depending what you want to do and what kind of requirements from the DFM is defined. We apply every kind of process, some in-house, some with suppliers because it's difficult to master everything. But at the end, you
Yes.
need to know and recognize what is really the best workflow to get then the surface polishing surface that you required.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, you definitely with all those different post processes, it's hard to do everything yourself, right? You have to have really good qualified partners.
Yes.
Yeah, excellent. Thanks for going over that. I want to dig back a little bit further into nitinol, and I know that like nitinol can be like heat sensitive, right? And when for certain applications, maybe for something like this, there's shape setting. Does that come into play? The sensitivity to heat and processing when you're working with nitinol?
Yes, absolutely. And
Okay.
I mean, Nitinol is for us the Champions League at the moment. The interest in nitinol is clearly a differentiator compared to other materials that has specific applications. We are, however, at the beginning of what is possible with this material, honestly. Telling you here that everything is solved would be a lie. It's an interesting journey to go with. We are happy to be linked to research institution here in Switzerland, in Europe, that is always a collaboration with, I would say, specific know-how, can be analytics, powder characterization, this heat sensitivity assessment. There are plenty of, I would say, pitfalls and parameters to understand. By mastering titanium, it's a good start. Titanium in itself is very demanding if you compare with cobalt chrome and stainless steel that are basically, I would say, powder that we start with without any risk of fire, oxidation, and so on. Titanium is a little bit more tricky, but then comes nitinol on the top, where I would say a little change into the percentage between nickel and titanium can basically make it completely wrong. Huh?
Yeah. There's been a lot of talk about high purity and different grades of nitinol, maybe different grades, one for like a single use device. And you had like the forceps, and maybe that's not nitinol, but that's just an example, right? And then an
Yes.
implantable application. Do you kind of work with the different grades as well?
So basically, we like to be quite conservative here.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in the medical device industry, there is the well-known titanium grade 5 Li,
Okay.
23 to be on the material side. This is the material that is working for implants. We know it. We know also the limitation to make it implantable. You have norm. ASTM is basically very clear about that. The oxygen content, mechanical stability that need to be required. And of course, all all topics related to biocompatibility, but also surface cleanliness that comes then with the post-processing aspect of that. All that together, there are different topics, how to clean that, how to make it, I would say, um, uh, surface smooth or rough, depending the applications,
Mm-hmm.
defines that what will then be the medical device.
Interesting. The surface smooth versus rough, and you had that really shiny ankle replacement, and then you had the lattice that probably looked like it was a little more rougher, and maybe on purpose, probably for the
Yes.
ingrowth. Is that
Exactly. You
okay?
can steer that from two extremes, very polished to
Yeah.
very rough to promote bone ingrowth.
Okay. Interesting. Excellent. I'll be remiss if I ask if you can talk a little bit, Nicholas, about the long heritage in Switzerland of watchmaking and how that's influenced you and your organization and how you approach things. That'd be very interesting you could share that.
So basically, Switzerland is a very small country, huh? But very strong in watch industry since years. Of course, this gives you a sort of DNA, philosophy. How do you think? Some of our employees used to work in the watch industry, producing components or toolings and so on. This is a background that is very important to have, even though additive manufacturing is far away from the standards of precision that the watchmaking industry is requiring, can be on surface, can be on tolerances. Uh, but knowing that push you a little bit to go to the limits, especially today with hybrid processes, we have more and more devices that are printed and machined. How to guarantee this precision from, I would say, an unprecise 3D printed part to a precise part that goes into an assembly or has a specific function into it. And here, this precision culture helps a lot, I would say. Even though
Yeah.
I have a little know-how about what is required to make a watch.
But the precision aspect, that's a great, thanks for sharing that, Nicholas. And thanks for joining the MedTech Unboxed podcast. It's been a great conversation.
Thank you very much, Steve.